here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott. Week 9 we're heading into. We have one more matchup tonight with the Cincinnati Bengals against the Cleveland Browns. This is our Halloween edition. It is literally October 31st this year, and this week is flying by. Again, we're already into week 9. We have a ton of bye weeks to talk about. Luckily, not too many injuries, which is a good thing. A couple names out there you may have heard of. And then we're going to dive into our picks for the waiver wire. Some guys that are probably under-owned that are definitely going to be available or should still be available in most of your redraft leagues, possibly in a keeper league dynasty. I would say most of them are long gone on that level, but again, Pat and I were involved in a lot of leagues, dynasty, redraft, our league of record, which is a keeper league, which has a splash of redraft to it. Pat, how'd you do this week so far? You looking up or hanging in there?
Got 2 games still hanging in the balance. The one with you in our one dynasty league, which looks like you're gonna pull that one out. I need a really big game from Kareem Hunt and Tyler Boyd to pull that out. I don't think I'm going to get that, but looking fairly good everywhere else. It's been a pretty interesting week as far as fantasy goes. Like you said earlier, we didn't have a lot of injuries this week, which is great, but also not very common for us. We definitely seem to, spend a lot of our time in the beginning of these podcasts sort of going over injury reviews. And thankfully, we won't have to do that much today, so hopefully we can spend a little bit more time on the actual meat and potatoes of waiver wire pickups for week 9. It's going to be a big week for waiver wire pickups because we do have 6 teams on bye this week, and there's going to be a lot of people streaming quarterbacks. Tight ends are going to be out. There's a lot of skill players that are going to be missing this week. So I think this week and week. There's another week that's really heavy on buys. Another 16 bye week. I want to say it might be week 10. There's a lot of bye weeks, so definitely going to give you some guys that you can pick up now. You can play through this week, probably through next week as well if you need to. So I know for me personally, I like to get ahead of bye weeks and things like that, and sort of have my roster set up for the next week. I'm already set my roster 2 weeks ahead, based off of the players that I currently have. And that kind of gives me an idea. And it reminds me, honestly, to continue to look a couple weeks out, look for defensive matchups, look for, again, if I'm in a league where I'm streaming a quarterback, which because I lost Trey Lance in a lot of leagues this year, I tend to be doing that in a lot of leagues. So I start looking for quarterbacks that I can stream for multiple weeks, or guys that have good matchups coming up that I could at least stream for 1 week. So not a bad practice to get yourself into if you're new to fantasy football. Go in and just click forward a few weeks in your little app or on the website and just take a look at, you might not realize, you're like, oh crap, 2 weeks ago you may have realized like, oh man, I have 6 of my 9 starters are on bye this week. I might need to do something about that and start picking up players with decent matchups and stuff like that ahead of time. So again, that's something that I like to do just to try to stay ahead of the game. But we're definitely going to give you a list here of people that we can kind of recommend picking up to start either this week or in the upcoming weeks. Before we get started on that, let me just throw our information out there. You can follow us on Twitter. We are at the 9Route1 and at Scott from Delco. You can also check out our website, which is www.the9routeffb.com, or you can email the show at the 9routeffb@gmail.com as well. Before we get into our waiver wire pickups for this week, we're going to jump into some quick injury news here. Just quick hit these.
Time for the news.
First, Cooper Kupp left the game literally in the last 2 minutes of the game. Looked like he got tackled, rolled up on. Looks like a sprained ankle as of right now. Doesn't seem like there's any major damage. He did walk off the field. He is considered day-to-day with that ankle injury moving forward. I think he'll be fine. Like I said, he did walk off the field. probably should have been in there. And I think Sean McVay sort of alluded to that in his press conference after the game, was kind of kicking himself for having Cooper Kupp out there in a game where they were down by 3 scores. But I think luckily he avoided a major injury. So that's a good news for any Cooper Kupp owners out there.
Another wide receiver to speak of is somebody who's had a little bit of an injury-plagued season so far. Christian Watson, Green Bay Packers, had a catch for 12 yards and immediately left the game with a concussion. Was ruled out for the remainder of the game, and obviously we'll have to clear that protocol. He just had gotten back from missing 2 games with a hamstring, had a lot of issues in training camp, similar stuff. He's a player that was drafted for his athletic talent and possible development as a top wide receiver. It's been very hard for him this season to find any footing. He really has not looked worthy so far. And again, those injuries are a factor. The best ability is availability in the NFL. And right now, he just can't stay healthy. The team doesn't look that great. And a couple of the other rookies in Romeo Doubs and Samori Toure finally had a nice little welcome to the NFL game last night. It's going to make it tough for him, but right now, Christian Watson definitely going to have to wait and see if he can be cleared of his concussion and available coming up this week against the Detroit Lions.
Another wide receiver with a concussion left the game, Richie James for the New York Giants. James was getting some looks early in the season, but Darius Slayton seems to have come back around, and with Wan'Dale Robinson getting healthy, they are really the 2 main guys there in New York. That they even throw the ball a ton in that offense. But Richie James ended up, unfortunately, losing 2 fumbles on 2 punt returns that cost the Giants that game. During that second punt return is when he became concussed and left the game. Did not return again. He will have to clear the concussion protocol to be out there again, but not a guy who has any, doesn't have a ton of fantasy relevance at the moment.
And finally, we're going to look at one Mark Ingram of the New Orleans Saints. Knee injury yesterday. It looks like he might be out about 3 to 4 weeks with a grade 2 MCL sprain. This happens at a weird time right now. Obviously, he had been just playing second fiddle to Alvin Kamara, who had a monster game yesterday. There have been some rumors swirling that Kamara possibly could be traded. Saints are kind of stuck in a tough cap situation and missing some draft picks based on some trades. That might be that might be poo-pooed right now, not having somebody maybe viable. Dwayne Washington is next up on the roster, depth chart wise, and they do have Jordan Howard and Jake Funk on the practice squad. Again, not that you're digging deep on Saints backup running backs because we know Kamara is the show, but Ingram being out these 3 to 4 weeks could definitely play a factor on real NFL time with any possible trades with Alvin Kamara. That being said, again, 3 to 4 weeks with a slight sprain is one thing. He's not a kid anymore, so it may take him a little bit longer to get back into the swing of things. He was just a depth piece on your bench, if anything, just in case. But again, he's only going to be out a few weeks, so just monitor it as far as Mark Ingram goes. But definitely going to be missing, looks like possibly up to a month.
And that's pretty much it for the fantasy relevant. There were some other injuries, some guys that came off. I think Tyler Higbee came off the field. I ended up coming back into that game. So nothing major to report. Nobody missing any major time. I know that we covered the Jamar Chase injury last week, so we're not going to hit that again. But luckily, we escaped week 8 with not too many injuries to the fantasy relevant players. So a little sigh of relief there with so many teams playing. To only have a few injuries is a good thing. It's about time, because I feel like a lot of what we ended up doing on this podcast was all injury related for a little while there. So glad to not have to talk too much about that this week. What we are going to talk about a lot this week are our waiver wire pickups. Weekly waiver wire. We have 6 teams, like I said, on bye this week. The Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys, the Denver Broncos, New York Giants, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the San Francisco 49ers. With all of those players out of the mix for your week 9 lineups, we got a couple players that we did some research on, some guys that should be available in most leagues here, and some guys that immediately are going to become streaming options for you at the quarterback and tight end positions, and running back and wide receivers that you can stash who either are on bye or are coming off a bye, that could definitely fit into your roster somewhere within the next few weeks, now that we are hard and heavy into the bye weeks hitting us.
First guy we're going to talk about is actually somebody who I drafted in our league of record and quickly dropped him because he wasn't really performing, but has had a couple weeks there where he doesn't seem to be the same guy that we thought. Was that Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears, 33% owned. He's picked up about 19 points a game in his last 4 games, and that's pretty decent for a starting quarterback. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and some of the established veterans haven't been doing as well. So he's definitely one of the cheekier pickups right now. He's looking like somebody who, again, isn't maybe going to win your league yet, but he does have a nice little stretch coming up, going up against, he's got Miami this week, the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons love to bleed points. Then coming back to the Jets, Green Bay's been up and down. He's had some nice games, down the stretch. I mean, the last 4 weeks, you're talking about 5 passing touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns, a couple games there where he almost reached the century mark, put up 30 against Dallas in a loss, but all we care about is the points. And I think that having him right now, he's number 11 in fantasy this year. So definitely look for Justin Fields, add him to your roster.
Yeah, after a pretty shaky start, he definitely, I think the Bears are finally doing what works traction with him. Yeah. Well, they're finally letting him run the ball. I think there's so much emphasis being placed on, protecting these quarterbacks, and the league does a really good job at protecting them in the pocket. But once they get out and start running, a lot of that protection sort of goes away. I mean, other than their ability to slide. But I think when you why I don't understand why these teams want to draft these athletic quarterbacks, and it gives them that added dimension, but then they want to sit there and be like, oh, don't run, don't get hurt, get out of bounds, make sure you slide. Like, these guys, they're professional athletes. Like, if what he does well is run with the football, at least at this point in his career, because look at Jalen Hurts. I mean, last year there was so many questions on whether that guy was going to be good enough as a passer to make it in this league, and now all of a sudden you give him, a weapon like A.J. Brown, and he's showing you what he can do with his arm. He just had to buy enough time with his legs and win games for Philadelphia, with what he was good at until he was able to progress in his career as a thrower. And I think Justin Fields is taking that similar path. Right now, he's not the best passer in the league. You can see it when you watch the games. But what he does do well is run the football. And I think, as long as the Bears offensive offensive coordinator and head coach get together and use Justin Fields' strengths to the team's advantage, I feel like he's going to continue. All these quarterbacks with these rushing upsides, they're perfect for your fantasy team because they don't have to throw the ball a ton. You can get, he's been averaging about 14 fantasy points per game the last 4 weeks just with his legs. So he doesn't have to be the best passer in the world, but he can get you 14 with his legs and another 10 with his arm. But yeah, sign me up for that. I'll absolutely take that. Another guy who's been doing very well, but is going to be on a bye this week, Jimmy Garoppolo with the San Francisco 49ers. He's not, he's not one of these guys who's going to blow you away with, what he does on the field statistics wise, just what you would consider, a game manager type of quarterback. But after week 10, Jimmy Garoppolo has got probably the easiest schedule of any quarterback left in the league. He doesn't have a bad matchup left. So he goes on by week 9. And then week 10, they play the Chargers, who are middle of the pack against the quarterback position. But then after that, it's Arizona, New Orleans, Miami, Tampa, Seattle, Washington, Las Vegas, Arizona again in week 18 if you play in week 18. But every single one of those matchups from week 11 on are plus matchups for Jimmy Garoppolo. And he scored 20 fantasy points in each of the last 5 weeks as it is. And some of those were against decent teams. Some of them, like the Rams, for example, were really good against the quarterback position. Jimmy G still put up almost 24.5 points against them. So I think with all the weapons that they have in San Francisco on offense, especially once Debo comes back from his injury, Jimmy can just literally just dink and dunk the ball down to Debo and Kittle and Ayuk, and now he's got McCaffrey. Like, he's one of these quarterbacks who's going to benefit from having outstanding skill position players that he can get the ball to and just sort of rack up yards and touchdowns based on what they do after the catch.
That is true. We're going to move into running backs right now. One guy who has been floating around a little bit, some people may have picked him up due to a injury to Cordarrelle Patterson, but he may still be out there because it's been an up and down season for the Atlanta Falcons. Tyler Allgeier closing in on higher ownership. He's about 44% owned in most leagues. Again, you could definitely probably find him out there still. He's been 10 or plus touches in 6 of the last 7 games. Obviously, Atlanta definitely looking to, do a little bit of the run as far as part of their package. Again, they had a crazy game yesterday against Carolina, which was a bit of a shootout. But you have seen Allgeier. He's closing in right now in the last 3 weeks. If you average it out, he's been on the field for about 60% of the snaps. So I think they're definitely looking at evaluating the future talent as opposed to maybe somebody a little more established. He can play both sides of that ball where he can make the run between the tackle and is a little bit of a threat out of the backfield when it comes to catching a pass. He's actually the 4th best rookie running back this year. Obviously, Breece Hall was kind of running away with things. We have Dameon Pierce has also been a big name, but Allgeier is showing maybe a reason why people were high on him earlier in the season. And again, it's a tough offense to play on, but you're looking at 11 points against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago and puts up 17 and a half in our league of record, including a receiving touchdown. So I think he's starting to come into his own a little bit with that offense as they've been growing through the season. So maybe try to see if he's available. Definitely a good depth piece and definitely might be able to help you out in these bye weeks as a flex or possible RB2.
Yeah, got to be careful with him, though, because Cordarrelle Patterson should potentially be coming back off of IR, or would be eligible to come back off of IR, I believe, next week. So, not really sure how much work Algier is going to get once Cordarrelle Patterson gets back, but it is he's definitely worth putting on your bench at the moment. And like I said, with 6 teams on bye, maybe starting for you this week. Another guy that you can pick up who is a little bit more available is Latavius Murray. He's only about 22% owned. Since Murray joined the Denver Broncos, he's averaging a little over 13 carries a game, which is actually almost double what Melvin Gordon's been averaging, which is 7.6 carries a game. Murray just seems, since he got there, just seems to be the lead back. Now, he has not eclipsed the 50% snap margin yet, but it's one of those things where I think they trust Gordon a little bit better with the offense, running routes, pass protection, things like that. So Gordon playing more, but when Murray's in there, they're handing him the ball. He got 14 carries this past week versus Jacksonville. Only went for 46 yards, but did score a touchdown. Also added 1 reception for 13 yards on 2 targets. So I had a fairly respectable fantasy day since joining the Broncos. Has had three double-digit fantasy outputs in 4 games with them. So again, not a guy who you're falling over yourself to get, but any running back who can put up double-digit points in any given week is definitely worth putting on your roster. In again, especially with all the running backs that we have coming up on bye, you may end up needing to throw him in a flex spot or a running back 2 spot at some point, depending on how many players you have on bye. So definitely a guy you want to throw on your bench. Again, look ahead, see if you got anybody. If you're one of those lucky teams who has a bunch of players with different bye weeks, and you can kind of just plug one guy in here and move somebody out of the flex and move them into a different running back or wide receiver position, that's great. But if you don't, you're going to need guys like Latavius Murray, like Tyler Algier, and like some of the other running backs and wide receivers that we're going to continue to talk about here.
This one's a little bit interesting. We're getting into the Los Angeles Rams backfield, which is murky. Murky is a polite way of putting it. Obviously, there's a lot going on there. Tomorrow, I believe, is our NFL trade deadline at 4 p.m.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken. So the possibility of Cam Akers being shipped out, somebody big being shipped in. I know that they were the Rams. Sean McVay were all in on trying to get all in on Christian McCaffrey, but couldn't quite meet the asking price. I think now seeing that division rival switching gears and taking it to him yesterday, using that piece may have a factor. That's my personal opinion. If Kamara goes anywhere, I wouldn't be surprised maybe if somehow, this team tries to pull it off. They can wiggle out of cap issues all time, and who knows? We'll see how that plays out. But as far as the roster goes right now, Cam Akers being out of the picture, Darrell Henderson Jr. is obviously, I guess, the lead back. Malcolm Brown's there. But Ronnie Rivers got a little play yesterday. He was given about half the snaps, had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 15 yards. Nothing to write home about. But at the same time, it went up against the 49ers, who have the second best, if not pound for pound, the best defense in all football when it comes to attacking and holding down the fantasy football running back position, albeit a division game too. And the Rams are not like they were last year. Ronnie Rivers and also Kieran Williams, rookie that hasn't really made it quite yet. But again, with some of these shakeups that could happen possibly with, again, a Cam Akers trade and things of that nature, you could definitely see that, again, Kieran Williams is designated for return from IR from earlier this season. You might see these guys start to make a little bit of play in the backfield, and McVay knows how to use certain pieces correctly. So keep an eye on Ronnie Rivers, keep an eye on Kieran Williams. Again, Malcolm Brown might be available as well for some people out there, but I'm sure a lot have already pounced on him based on the news and notes that have been popping through that LA Rams backfield. But right now, they're both Kieran Williams and Ronnie Rivers are probably both less than 5% owned in most leagues. You'd probably be able to stash them on your bench. It wouldn't hurt to maybe pick them up if you can, non-waiver wire wise, because again, we'll see by tomorrow around 4:00 what shakes out in Los Angeles.
All right, moving on to the wide receiver position. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was some news that broke that the Chiefs had restructured Travis Kelce's contract to make a little bit of cap space this year. They converted some of his base salary into a signing bonus, then, obviously detracted from the cap. Nobody was really sure why. I think everybody kind of knew that Kansas City was, probably looking to pick somebody up or make a trade. They did, which we already announced for Kadarius Toney. But this is the official, you need to pick Kadarius Toney up call to action here. He's about 54% owned. I think some people have already jumped on. I think a lot of people jumped on Kadarius Toney as soon as the trade was announced. I saw him picked up in pretty much every league that he was available in that I play in. Play with some pretty savvy fantasy managers like Scott over here who get out and get this news and pick these players up right away. Obviously, we don't know yet. I think he's basically just a stash and see at this point. It does concern me a little bit that guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Marcus Valdez-Scantling, if the Chiefs are going out and trading for, another wide receiver, do they just want more, explosiveness? Do they just want another playmaker? Or do they not have confidence in the guys that they already have on their roster? I'm not really sure where they are at. Rookie Sky Moore has not seen much action in the actual offense. He's been returning kicks and punts, but hasn't seen that many snaps with the offense. So a little concerning for those three guys, particularly that potentially Kadarius Toney could come in here and be the number one receiver in a few weeks. So again, not a guy that I'm going to play anytime soon. He hasn't played recently, so I'm sure as heck not putting him in my lineup, but not a guy that I'm really looking to throw in right away, but a guy that I want to grab and hold on to just in case he becomes, Patrick Mahomes' number 2 target in that offense. We all know Kelce will be number 1 probably until he retires, but if Toney can become the number 2 target in that offense, his fantasy value could shoot through the roof. So definitely if you have a bench spot and you're looking at stashing a potential league winner, Kadarius Toney could be that guy.
Yes, we shall see. Sometimes Andy can get, gold out of garbage. So we'll see what happens. Another guy, probably pretty solid with the ownership, but depending on your league, especially like a redraft league where a lot of people dump people often. There's not a lot of, not even dynasty, but just a keeper concept where people are stashing people. And some people just aren't high on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense right now. But Chase Claypool, he's pretty much like about 60% of leagues I'd say own. But again, you can find him out there. Some people might drop him if there's maybe a sexier guy out there at a different position just to make a dump. Again, he's definitely not starting for a lot of people, but if you see him out there, he's starting to become a little bit more of a factor, almost like he was in his rookie season. Obviously being the best player in the NFL, according to him, is always a thing that I guess quarterbacks look at. But yeah, he's been getting more and more involved in the offense. When you really sit there and look over the last 4 weeks, he's been getting about 7.5 targets a game. That's all with Kenny Pickett, who obviously probably the best option they have at quarterback right now. 3 of the 4 last games that he's played in, double digits, threw a touchdown pass this week versus the Eagles. It's little things like that do help us out here in fantasy land to, keep guys moving and grooving, when it comes to getting you points any way possible. I know McCaffrey had the hat trick yesterday, and again, you'll take those. Your wide receiver gets a jet sweep for a 20-yard touchdown, stuff like that. It's huge. So those are the guys that you like to see get involved as much as possible. So they're going into a bye week, so he may become a little bit more available. Some people will roll the dice, dump him, maybe look for some type of a stronger backup based on all the buys that are happening. As far as that goes, I think he is somebody that, again, should be on your bench and has what's looking like some startability, when it comes to the league as far as fantasy goes. So if you see Chase Claypool out there, just remind him how good he is and pick him up and put him on your roster.
He would appreciate that, I'm sure.
Yeah, he will tell you too.
Yeah. No, and what you said is spot on with him going on a bye week. This is the time I like to pick players up, is when they're going on to a bye week. And this is the time when a lot of these players will be dropped because teams are looking for replacements. They're looking for bye week fill-ins. And, a lot of times, I mean, we've all been there, right? As fantasy football, managers, sometimes you have to drop a guy that you don't want to drop. You want to hold on
feeling
to
in
him.
the world.
It really is. But sometimes you just have to do that. Or maybe, you get hit by the injury bug. A couple of guys go down and now you need to pick somebody up, and now you have to drop somebody that, maybe you didn't want to drop. So always make sure that you're going out there and checking every Wednesday morning when the waivers run through the leagues. I go out and I check who people dropped, because those are the guys that, a lot of times, sometimes they drop guys who haven't done anything and probably won't do anything. And, the guys like Kadarius Toney who were picked up and didn't turn into anything, but now, they're dropping them. But there's a lot of times out there where guys get dropped, defenses get dropped all the time, where, maybe they just have one bad matchup, and then the next 2-3 weeks in a row, they have really good matchups. If you find those defenses out there, those players that, again, maybe have been dropped, but reluctantly, go out and grab them right away. I mean, and you don't even have to use a waiver priority on those guys, because waivers have already cleared. So, depending on the type of league you play in, you can either pick those guys up free and clear, or sometimes they sit on waivers for another day or two. But even still, usually they'll clear again after that, and you can pick them up without any waiver priority or spend any fab money or anything like that. So definitely check that out. Another wide receiver that should be available in most leagues, in about 61% of leagues, he should be available. Romeo Doubs. After the goose egg he gave you in week 7, Doubs came back pretty big in week 8, going 4 for 62 and a touchdown on 7 targets. He's one of those, what I would consider a break glass in case of emergency player, who you have him on your bench. You don't really want to start him every single week. He's not one of those guys that's going to give you any guaranteed production, but he's one of those guys, again, when we're talking about bye weeks, he's one of those guys where if you have, a couple wide receivers on bye, or a wide receiver and a running back, and you're looking for a flex option, Doubs can put up this type of line. I mean, that's 16.2 PPR points. If you play half PPR, it's 14.2. These guys are viable options to just kind of hold the place for 1 week and get you through the week. So again, if he's available out there for you, again, we're not telling you to go out and pick these guys up and drop good players. Obviously, if your roster is stacked, and maybe you don't need to be listening to a waiver wire episode of a podcast to begin with, but if you're hurting, and again, you've got some injuries, you've got some guys that are not producing on the end of your bench, these are some guys that we suggest going out and picking up, because they do have the potential to pop off, and you want to make sure that you grab those guys before that happens, so that you're not fighting on the waiver wire with your waiver claims or with your fab dollars when it's kind of already out in the open.
True. Real quick. I mean, I was very high on Doubs coming in. I know Rodgers made a lot of hype about him. And again, growing pains as a rookie, that offense as a whole. But I do think he's a guy, if you were in a keeper league, I've been trying to get him in our league, which your brother is just not budging. I guess he wants, 5 first rounders just to bust my stones. But all my other leagues, I have him, and I'm really hyped. I think he's going to down the road be a good player, both with Rodgers and whoever maybe next heir apparent quarterback will be. Another wide receiver, I think we're kind of all happy for this guy, because he was hyped for a long time and had some serious injury issues year after year. 4-year pro out of Ohio State, Paris Campbell. A lot of people were high on him coming out as a rookie, and every year so far, he's just been banged up, injury bug, missing chunks almost the entire season. never able to stay healthy. He's having one of the best statistical seasons of his career. He's been on the field for about 86% of the snaps throughout the season, which is pretty solid. It's right behind Michael Pittman. He's right there. He's done a lot of his work out of the slot. In our league of record as a whole, again, with a little bit of a quieter start, he's wide receiver 45, but over the last 4 weeks, he's wide receiver 20. That's huge. Again, 25 targets in the last 3 games, definitely more involved. And again, it was a quieter week this week. Sam Ehlinger just coming into his own as a starter for a game against Washington. Again, we know what, we talked at length about Indianapolis, the franchise quarterbacks and stuff like that as a whole. But to see this guy getting used as much as he is, and I think a lot of people don't know who he is, some newer fantasy players. So he's definitely going to be sitting out there. He's only owned in about 14% of leagues. Some of us that have been playing for a while obviously would know him. You'd still be a little bit of a caveat there because of the injury history. But with the way he's going right now, both bye weeks and possibly flex worthy, based on all that volume that he's getting in an offense that at times can be very competitive and put up some points in yardage. Paris Campbell, if he's out there, put him on your bench. It won't hurt you. I think you'd be surprised. You'll probably end up using him maybe for a game or two down the road, and it might come back to pay you off big time down the road come the playoffs.
Yeah, not a name I thought we'd be mentioning ever. I thought his career was over for sure. But
I'm so happy to see somebody finally, make it back from that as opposed to go the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. One last wide receiver that we're going to recommend picking up, Rondale Moore from the Arizona Cardinals. He's owned in about 28% of leagues. He's played over 85% of the snaps in all the games that he's been healthy this season. He has 6 or more receptions in 3 of those 5 games. Again, he's not the number one on that team, but with Hollywood Brown injured for the season, not coming back, the team did just pick up Robbie Anderson in a trade with the Panthers. But Rondale Moore has been in Arizona. He's been with Kyler Murray for the past few seasons, and they've got a rapport. Rondale Moore has a role carved out in this offense. He's never going to be the like I said, he's never going to be the DeAndre Hopkins. He's never going to be he's not the fill-in for Hollywood Brown either. But with Brown out, it definitely leaves Rondale Moore with a little bit more action, a little bit more targets. He's had 8 or more targets in those 3 games that he finished with double-digit points. And as long as they can throw him the ball and get him involved, he definitely can put some points on the board for your team. So, again, not a guy that is an every week start, but with these bye weeks coming up, you're going to see some different looks in your lineup when you have 6 teams on bye. So, again, Rondale Moore is a guy who you can flex pretty confidently, especially in PPR leagues.
All right, moving off of wideouts, and we got a couple tight ends to talk about. First off is a guy that, when it came to rookie tight ends, he was mentioned, but, had to start the season a little banged up and was on IR, and that's fine. But this, to me, is a guy that looks like suddenly is going to be that guy. I don't know if it's just the usage right now based off of that, but Greg Dulcich is only owned in about 35% maybe of leagues right around now. Again, dynasty leagues, no chance. Keeper leagues where some savvier managers knew to hold on to him, use the IR slots. Probably not, but he could be. Again, he's one of those guys that maybe got dumped to make room for somebody, and they don't value the tight end position. This guy's a monster. It's only been 3 games. Maybe I'm getting a little hyped up because I'm a Kyle Pitts owner, so it's easy to like any other tight end in the league because every game Pitts has had that's been solid for me this year has been on my bench, and then when I start him, it's like, wah, wah, wah. Yeah, this guy's come in 3 games, and he's already out targeting a lot of your solid names out there. He's averaging close to 6 targets a game in just 3 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, as far as our fantasy league of record, he is the 7th highest point total at the position. I mean, again, and you're in rare air when you're doing that. Now, if you can keep it up all season, but you're talking Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews, Big Shot Bob Tonyan, and them guys. He's right there with those people. In the last 2 weeks, 8 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Is it going to stay that way? Maybe. Russ seems like he's found somebody. He did it with Brett Rippon at quarterback too. So it's not a matter of who it is. He was on the field for 80% of the snaps in week 8. They're on a bye week. So again, this could be a spot where somebody has to dump him. If he's out there, pick him up. To me, he is just oozing tight end one for the rest of the season, where, maybe it's a guy Russ rallies around, because we've seen the usage go down. I hate to say it. I know you're a big on him. Cortland Sutton, and those guys aren't getting the target share that they were at the beginning of the year, and it's kind of gone downhill. But if this guy's going to be that guy, let's ride him all the way through the fantasy playoffs. Again, but we shall see. But Greg Dulcich, I think it's scary right now, just watching him underneath. But I think in 4 or 5 weeks, people are going to know who he is. So get him while you can.
Yeah, we were just talking before we got on air here, and he was sort of a throw-in player that I kind of traded for recently in a dynasty league, and I made it seem like a throw-in, but I was very happy and very interested to get him on my roster. And according to some of our league mates, I gave up too much, but opinions like buttholes, right? Everyone's got one, and most of them stink. So don't really care about what other people think of my trades. I feel like getting Dulcich in that trade was, part of what made that a good deal for me. So very, very interested in seeing how the rest of the year plays out. Russell Wilson loves tight ends, so definitely a guy that I'm going to be interested in starting in that league. So. Oh,
you meant actually on the field?
Yeah.
His CR. All right.
Receiving tight ends. Yeah.
My bad. Sorry, Russ. But no, and again, real quick too, I did mention previously when we talked about our trade episode that he's got that future potential. He's a guy to go out and get. So from one guy that has it going on to another guy who might. Pat, who you got for the last guy?
Well, fantasy managers. Maybe if you hadn't played fantasy in 4 years, you'd remember this name, but he hasn't done much until this year. But Evan Ingram, he's only about 40% owned in leagues. He's been really good this year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. As we know, Doug Peterson loves his tight ends as well. Helped to make Zach Ertz a household name when he was in Philadelphia. Evan Ingram has 6+ targets and 4+ receptions in the last 4 games, and he's averaging just over 12 PPR points per game in that span. He's the tight end 13 in fantasy football right now with only 1 touchdown on the year. But he's also top 8 in targets, receptions, and yards on the season amongst tight ends. So he basically is one of those tight ends who is just on that cusp of, the tight end 1 territory, being a tight end, being the tight end 13 right now. If he gets a few more red zone, a few more end zone targets, or, just can house a couple of these, because he's a really good athlete. I mean, one of the things that the Giants loved about Evan Ingram when they drafted him initially was how much of an athletic freak he was at the tight end position. He's one of these, maybe not as freakish as Kyle Pitts, but, he was like, that was the kind of hype that he was getting when he came out of college. So, maybe it's just as it is with a lot of players in the NFL, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you are not getting the ball, it's really tough to show, what you can do and who you are as a player. And I think with Ingram finally, landing in the top 10 in targets and having a quarterback that's looking for him, he's actually gone from tight end streamer to a guy who I can realistically see playing pretty much every week. He's not a guy that, he's not your Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews. He's not going to single-handedly win you a week, but he's also not going to single-handedly lose you a week like Kyle Pitts. I would much rather have a guy like Evan Ingram in my lineup than Kyle Pitts, because Pitts might put up 19 points like he did this week, but he might also put up 2 points like he did, the 2 previous weeks. So for me, I'll take the steady, 8 to 10, 12 points from Evan Ingram and be happy with that in my tight end position, unless, again, I have one of those tight end studs. But definitely, again, with bye weeks coming up and tight end, being one of those positions that you're probably going to stream, definitely Ingram is a guy that you should pick up and hold on to for the next few weeks at least.
That's going to do it for our waiver wire and luckily quiet injury news this week. Definitely look for us here at the 9 Route on our socials. The 9 Route FFB at gmail.com is where you can send us a message and we will respond. www.the9routeffb.com is our website. Check it out. We have at the 9 Route on Twitter, and I am at Scott from Delco. If you are looking to shoot us any messages, questions, comments, concerns, let us know you like us, subscribe, things of that nature. We're on YouTube. Like we're in a lot of spots. Podcasts, please download and listen. We do appreciate it. We look forward to helping you out in your fantasy season. Just want to give a quick shout out also to Mickey's Port of Call Pub in Tuckerton, New Jersey. It's Halloween. Kids eat free on Mondays at Mickey's. I'm sure they're probably going to have a little candy on the side. So take your kid down there, get them sugared up before the big run tonight. Happy hour from 3 to 6 all the time there. And again, I'm sure it looks like we're going to get a game 3 in for the World Series. So again, local boys done good. Fighting Phil's going for that home advantage to say, check the game out, maybe swing by Mickey's, enjoy yourself down there. Pat, anything before we sign off?
I think that's it. Just again, thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Please, when you listen to the podcast, click that little plus for us. That lets us know that you're listening, that you're downloading, and helps us keep going, doing what we're doing. Hopefully, we're helping you get some wins in your fantasy season, and hopefully can help you get a championship at some point this year.
All right, folks. For Pat, this is Scott. We will see you soon with our start sits. Have a great holiday for Halloween. And again, go Phils, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.